Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. Happy Thursday, happy May 1st, and happy everything at the movie industry is crushing it. We're going to talk about that today a little bit. That's why the theme of today's video is just everything times two. I am going to talk for you GME apes a little bit. I will put that early in the video if any of you just don't feel like listening to some AMC content, though I'd love, of course, if you'd stick around. I got just a kind of a note for GME apes because there's something I'm watching and I wanted to sort of, I don't know, just solidarity, right? Like apes together strong. But AMC crushing it. We're going to talk a little bit about that, give some updates. I've said for, I don't know, 9 months to a year or so that the industry turnaround was coming here. Kind of spotted that. You could just see from the movies that were coming out, and it's even exceeding my expectations. So we're going to just talk about everything times two and how much it's crushing it, starting with Sinners times two at 70 millimeters. So if you didn't see for 1 week only, I think it's the week of May 15th. Oh yeah, there it is at the bottom of the poster. The week of May 15th, you can see the locations. There are a couple of AMC locations. Looks like 3 of those at least are AMC locations. So if you can get to that and you missed Sinners in 70 millimeter, obviously that's been a big deal culturally in terms of how Ryan Coogler made the film, how he talked about why he made the film specifically for this, just the beauty of it. Boy, that's been wildly successful. And I think that's been fun for some of us. You know, whether you've been here through Bitcoin, AMC, or GameStop, you're used to sort of the media machine spinning negative narratives about us. And Variety, which is supposedly a movie industry, publication, did so on Sinners' first weekend. They basically kind of crapped on the results, and then Sinners has just been absolutely dominating since then. So good to see. And basically IMAX saying, hey guys, we're going to put that in theaters one more week. And effectively the week before, a couple of really big movies also start coming out. And so just great to see how the movie industry is filling in revenue everywhere. So if you missed that and you want to see that and you're near any of these locations, give that a check. I think tickets are already on sale. I mean, you can see it says that on the poster. So Sinners 70 millimeter gets kind of a second act. Speaking of two, so the quick GameStop message. Obviously Switch 2 coming out. Man, that has crushed it. A lot of the industry numbers that I saw were that it was going to sell 6 million units for its release, and that beats PlayStation 5, which had like 4.5 million units. So really, really big release, which obviously is going to have a nice uptick for GameStop numbers. Love to see that. I had pushed my followers that, look, if you're buying this Apes Together Strong, let's buy that at GameStop. So hopefully we've all had some contribution to GameStop's results. And I just wanted to call out something I'm seeing online. You guys, especially the OG type of apes who've been around a while, will recognize this, and you don't need my help. But just, I don't know, for whomever needs to hear it from me, it's been pretty clear there's a bit of an impatience narrative on GameStop. And when I say narrative, usually what I mean is kind of the network of people who I don't really consider apes. People who either are just here for a quick buck. Hey, that's fine. Traders want to make a quick buck. That's not like immoral necessarily, but it's not necessarily what some of us have been here for, this long-term hodl culture and changing some things. And so if it's just a trader who's impatient, I've got all kinds of grace for that. But what I also see sometimes is, when I say narrative, I mean there are, actors who have infiltrated all around you who try to sow seeds of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? That's why we've always called it that. And right now they're trying to shift sentiment into like, why hasn't Ryan Cohen already acted? Why don't we have an announcement on Bitcoin? All that stuff. I would just say personally, just opinion. My personal opinion is, I even said on the 3 of GameStop, AMC, and Bitcoin. On GameStop, my opinion is patience. Right now it's about patience. RC issued those bonds. Those bonds were specifically to buy Bitcoin. There's nothing that would ever tell you that's not happening, or perhaps has already been happening. There is a chance he got to buy the dip, and there was a significant dip in Bitcoin for a while. If you follow me on X, I track Bitcoin pretty closely. I post a lot of updates about that. Bitcoin is looking super bullish right now. I'm very excited about that. Go back and look at the 1-year chart and then look at where it is now. You will see that Bitcoin looks to me like it wants to break out soon. And boy, if it does, the areas, if you look at that chart, the areas above where we're at now, there's not a lot of like I don't know. Let's just say that it's going to run fast if it runs. That's just an opinion. That's not really even TA or anything. It's just my opinion. So Bitcoin looks like it's about to run. Probably RC, I'm just going to guess, bought the dip with some or all of that money. He's probably being prudent and is, I don't know, averaging in. I'm not sure. We'd have to find out. But he's doing about a $1.5 billion of Bitcoin purchases, and then has this 4.6 billion in cash. So people trying to get you negative, that has been the journey for AMC. We have had to fight so hard against all the sort of negative sentiment purveyors, and so I just have a lot of I don't know, empathy and camaraderie with my fellow hodlers in Bitcoin and GameStop when I see people trying to attack you. That really, really bothers me. I don't like the culture of people trying to manipulate sentiment, and I'm here to fight that. So that's why I just say, you got to do with your own money what you want to do. I can't tell you what to do with your own money, but for me in GameStop, I'm like, good Lord, the Switch is selling out like crazy, and that's a heck of a lot of revenue. And meanwhile, all this cash and probably all this Bitcoin, while Bitcoin is running, why would I be in a rush? If you're bought in, have some conviction and be along for the ride. That's just a point of view. So that's just me supporting you guys. I say you guys. I mean, like I believe in GameStop also. It's just obviously historically I've been an AMC ape. So anyway, I believe in GameStop. I believe in what's going on. Consider me somewhat converted, not somewhat, consider me converted. It's just, I think I couch my words a little bit because until AMC wins, I'm not leaving, right? So you're not going to see me change my narrative. This is just a message of support for what's going on in both Bitcoin and GameStop. All right, so now back to AMC. So everything times two. Well, how about the box office times two? Last April, we were at 430 million. Now that was heavily strike impacted, right? So I've told you guys now, I worked for 21 years at Nike. I did a lot of planning and numbers and forecasting and determining inventory and all kinds of things. And so one thing you would say is, be careful what you're comping to, what you're comparing to. Last year is a really funky comp because we had the strike. But nonetheless, it's a big deal to celebrate that we are more than double last year's April box office. We are not in the same place at all. And this April box office, if you go look broadly at other comps, other years, like say 2019 and 2018 and such. We're not quite there because like 2019, I think that was Endgame. I got to go back and remember. I should remember something as big as that. But, I film a lot of these videos sometimes off the cuff. You just have little brain freezes. Anyway, I don't think we quite hit that. But the point is, historically, you could go look. Adam had highlighted Box Office Mojo. That is a site that I use frequently. I also use thenumbers.com. And you will see this was a great April. Love to see it. I have signaled for a long time the box office turnaround was coming. I always said it was, here in April, and boy, did we do it. So up 103%, up almost $450 million. We landed at this is a really rough estimate at 875. I just kind of wanted to get this video out. I was a little impatient. The numbers aren't really fully out for the day. There's quite a few movies that hadn't reported yet. Like I didn't see numbers for The Accountant and The Amateur, so I'm kind of fudging the numbers just a little. But for sure, we more than doubled April. Like even on just Sinners and Minecraft, and I want to say maybe it was shoot, I can't remember what the other movie was that had reported. King of Kings, I think, was the other one. Just on those alone, we were more than double last year. So I felt comfortable giving you kind of an estimated number on the rest of the day from the other movies. So great to see. We have doubled last year's box office. The industry turnaround is here. And you guys know what's coming up. Like, first off, the industry itself is saying that Memorial Weekend is likely to be the biggest Memorial Weekend ever in the entire history of movies. And I'm just saying times two because you've got Mission Impossible and Lilo and Stitch both coming out. That is going to be a wild weekend at the movies. Huge weekend. While we've still got all these legs from various movies that have come out before it, that is going to be something we really look forward to. And of course, we've got Thunderbolts, which I kind of led off with if you saw the screen image, that is coming out today. As I filmed this, Thunderbolts is coming out tonight. And so we're going to have just so many big movies we've got, and Memorial Weekend now setting an all-time record. So I just want you to think about We've got Sinners was so big, IMAX is re-releasing it already for a week at the 70 millimeter, screens. We've got a Memorial Weekend that's going to be the biggest ever. We've got an April that was double last year, and we keep going. Have you seen that Dune 2 is doing a re-release? There's basically a special double feature event coming. If you missed that, you've got a chance to see that this summer. So what I love is you're starting to see, if you follow the industry, the exhibition industry is starting to get real smart. I feel like we just had Revenge of the Sith, right? Last I checked, that's up to like $34 million. $34 million on a 20-year-old movie. Let's ask Ted Sarandos if he feels real smart about the fact that it was like the day Sith came back out, he kind of said nobody wants to go to the movies. And here's Sinners is crushing it, and Revenge of the Sith, so far, think of that Simpsons meme, so far, has done $34 million on a 20-year-old re-release. Like, movies are just firing on all cylinders everywhere. And so the exhibitors are saying, you know what, we know we have an opportunity to I'm reusing the same word, opportunity to be opportunistic. Man, I think that's another Simpsons reference. I remember something about, I'm from the Department of Redundancy department. Maybe that's just an old joke. Anyway, they're filling in revenues. So if there's spots where they feel they've got enough screens, maybe there's a thin weekend, or maybe it's a Wednesday. I didn't look at when July 25th even is. I'd have to go check that. But so you get Dune 2 and Dune 1. You got the double feature coming out, but that's not the only. So we get Mad Max coming out, and we get the Mad Max double feature, and so that's going to be awesome. I was one, and I think many people noticed that, the newer Mad Max was frankly awesome and so highly reviewed. And for some reason, just I don't know quite if it was timing, marketing, quite what happened. I think I remember it lost its IMAX screens pretty fast. Something else must have come out. I'd have to go back and check what that was again. And so it just kind of didn't seem like it got its full due. So having that re-release and having that re-release as a double feature, I've been telling my daughter I really want her to see these, because I just think, like, she's kind of really gotten into music and stuff. And so Fury Road was one where it was like, at its time, I saw that in theaters with a bunch of buddies. Like, we kind of had like a I don't know, dad's night out of all the dads or whatever. And I just remember being like, whoa, this is really different. And it was like this whole rock experience and stuff. And so if you haven't seen those, or if you did and you loved them, that's coming back out too. So there's just a really, I think, healthy thing going on in movie culture, where we've got this great blend of so many new movies, but also an understanding that there's space to fill back in and celebrate fandom. Like, look at how the fans showed up for Revenge of the Sith. I'm sure that the fans are going to show up for Dune. Fans are going to show up for Mad Max. And just a great opportunity. And so on the heels of all of that, I just want to talk about Q2 a little bit. Now, Mad Max and Dune that I just showed you are not Q2. Those are coming out later. But so let's talk Q2, because I just want to set up what's going on with our stock a little bit. And if you follow me on X, you've been seeing that I've been saying, hey, we're tracking closer and closer to a $2.9 billion box office. Now, I've been fairly careful in how I share that, because a lot still has to go right. So we've still got, Karate Kid, and we got to see how Thunderbolts does. We've got Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible, and we've got Final Destination Bloodlines. Gosh, we've got so much else. We've still got F1. I shouldn't do this without slides, you guys, because my brain is everywhere. This is the middle of the work day, and I'm gonna have to get back to work here when I finish filming this. But the point is, you guys remember, we have so many big movies still coming out the rest of the quarter that a lot of us are very excited about. And so depending on how those go, How to Train Your Dragon, how could I not name that? That's going to be huge in my house. So depending on how those go, we could even crush the numbers I'm telling you, or we could miss these numbers I'm telling you. So I'm not ready to just fully declare it, but I will say here and there, I keep trying to trim some numbers out to just keep, I don't want to call it conservative because things are firing so heavily right now, but to keep a reasonable forecast. And even at a reasonable forecast right now, I do have us hitting that 2.9. it's, I just think we could be anywhere way over it, and we could be anywhere way under it too, depending on how some movies break. So we're going to have to keep watch of that. But I just wanted to see, all right, what if we hit 2.9 on the nose? What's that going to look like for our earnings? And what I want to walk you through is, remember that Q3 last year there's just no sugarcoating it. It was a bit of a disappointment. We saw a very large dip in sort of the market share that AMC had at certain revenue levels. I've talked about that ad nauseum. I've covered that a few times. It was a suburban urban mix with some movies. It was a Latin versus Europe mix, whereas Cinemark is heavier in Latin America, AMC is heavier in Europe. There were just a lot of things that kind of fell against us. We also got attacked by a bunch of online influencers, some of whom, to my, no shortage of my effort, I see some of you still out there reposting because they might agree with your politics, and you're forgetting that they attacked AMC, and they're probably just paid influencers. So there was a lot that went on in Q3, and we had this big attendance dip, and we did not see the level of profitability I would have expected from that size of box office. So what I want to just show you is, what if at this $2.9 billion box office for Q2 now, what if we have the same, I'll call it lower attendance rate as last Q3? Okay, so that's going to be your left column. Then what if in the middle, I have an estimate where I've blended, so we finished Q4, we have actuals on that, right? So we had Mufasa, and we had Sonic, we had Wicked, and we have numbers from that quarter. That was a really nice quarter. And so what I've done is I have a blended average of, the lower attendance rate of Q3. Q4 bounced right back on our attendance. It was really good attendance. You saw we even had positive cash flows. And so I've got a blended version where I take the average attendance rate from Q3 and Q4 and just kind of mush them together and take an average. And then I've got what if we stayed at our Q4 level? We have these actuals from Q4 that's newer than Q3, where we had some big movies, like I said, Wicked and Mufasa and Sonic and a few others. What if we kept that attendance rate? So here you can just see, I'm not really doing a build, so you probably already jumped your eyes ahead, but let me talk it through. If we were so at a $2.9 billion box office, and I'm going to talk through the assumptions here in a minute here at the bottom of the slide, we would have a little less than 71 million people come to AMC globally. And now, that's counting Odeon and UCI and some of the Nordics that we hold and all of that. So it's our global attendance. And I think we would have a positive earnings of over $60 million. That's just an estimate. You guys have heard me say so many times, and these are rough estimates too that I'm giving you. This is not some kind of final, I'm putting my own name on these estimates. But, it is using my spreadsheets, all the things I always use. I can kind of plug and play numbers and kind of mess with some things. And so I'll talk to you about those assumptions in a minute. But I think even if we had this lower attendance rate that was quite the dip in Q3, it didn't look like any other quarter before or after it, we would still be highly, highly profitable this quarter, which will get reported in August, right? That's starting to be just around the corner. That's not that far away. Here we are in May. August is just not that far away. If we took the blended average, sort of the attendance dip of Q3 with the better rate of Q4, but we weren't as low as Q3, but not as high as Q4, we would make $90 million this quarter of bottom line earnings, right? To say nothing of how cash flows would likely be bigger than that, because I've told you guys many times, we have some non-cash expenses. And if we stayed at the Q4 rate, you can see then we would have, if we start approaching 80 million visitors to AMC and almost $120 million of bottom line earnings. So whatever we're at this quarter, even at Q3's attendance rate, and let's say I'm just wildly wrong on some assumptions, I'm almost feeling like you could lock in profits because I'd have to be really, really, really wrong here. So, my forecast is probably close to that middle column, probably something approaching 90 million. Again, I don't want to quite fully stamp that with my name on it or something, but let's just say that's where I'm kind of leaning and believing will be, and that's probably what I'll use as some kind of blended average from the quarters in terms of an attendance rate. But whatever it is, we're looking really great. So here's the assumptions I had behind those. A ticket price per person basically matching what we had in Q4. That's $11.56 a person. Now, I would actually say I got a feeling we're going to beat that, because think about, I'm going to show you in a minute, AMC has more premium screens than it had before. And think about Sinners in particular and how that's going to skew the results, and how there's starting to be this massive IMAX culture. And you know that AMC has more IMAX screens than anybody else. In fact, on Center's opening weekend, AMC had 7 of the top 10 locations. So I would not be surprised if we have a higher per person ticket rate. Well, that would increase our earnings that I'm showing you here. So you can just decide, do you think we're higher or lower than that Q4 number that we had? Because then I guess in a way too, I'm also saying there's not really inflation since then, but we know there has been. On the merch sales, we had really outstanding kind of other revenue, I'll call it, in Q4. It was a jump up from the rates that we had seen. I kind of tend to estimate that based on the size of the box office. And Adam told us they've been going deeper on the merch. In other words, having more units to sell, taking a more of an inventory risk, and then believing that those will sell through. I've talked to you guys a little bit. That gets definitely into my background. You talk about breadth and depth. Breadth is like having more variety of stuff you sell. Depth is having more of each item to sell. And Adam said they're taking more initial inventory to realize more sales. So our merch line has been growing. I don't know whether we can really count on it being at the rate that Q4 was. I don't know if that was because people were really into Sonic and Wicked and Mufasa, or if we continue to see that. I will say I have loved the popcorn buckets recently, like the one for The Accountant 2, the Airstream trailer, and some other things from some of the movies recently has just been a lot of fun. And obviously Minecraft had a lot of fun merch. And I do see that variety too of like, I want to say for Thunderbolts, you can buy all these different toppers. I think for the popcorn bucket, the toppers for something I saw. There's like 6 of them. It's, the cast, the characters. You can buy a little topper of each character. So starting to have some really great merch sales. So what I'm just telling you is I've assumed we kind of keep the same rate as Q4, which would be very big merch sales for us historically. So perhaps that's a little aggressive. Food and beverage, I've got us 1.5% per person. So I have a per person rate. Everything builds off the attendance. That's why I was wrong last Q3, because if you take the attendance and you've got those attendees times ticket price per person, those attendees feed how much merch we're selling, and then if I take a food and beverage dollars per person, which Adam and team report on that every quarter, so I've got a nice history on that. I'm able to kind of estimate that. And then you multiply those times our attendance. So I've got to get our attendance right. And that's why when Q3 had that unforeseen dip last year, I had our numbers wrong. That was the first quarter, and so far only quarter, where I'll call it being wrong, because every other quarter I've been like 95% plus accuracy. And most quarters I've been like 98% plus even accuracy. So I'll still stand by, hopefully, my track record on earnings. Let's see for Q1 and then now for Q2. But the point is, I've got us only growing 1.5% per person on food and beverage versus Q2 of last year. I would like to think maybe there's a chance we beat that, but it's just that number's so high. I think that was maybe, shouldn't quote this because I should go look at it, but I think in the high 740s a person or something like that, which is, I got to go look back at Q4 where we were. But I don't know, that seems reasonable, right? 1.5% over last year per person. You just got to get the attendance number right. So that's all of this, though, plugs into each of these bottom line numbers I'm showing you. So it just kind of comes down to what do you think our market share and attendance rates are going to be, and then especially what do you think the ticket price per person will be. On the expense side, I've got the film costs running at kind of that Q3, Q4 average. One of them was a little higher, one of them was a little lower. I think Q4 was fairly high, probably because we had, again, some of those big movies. Now, the thing is, in Q2 this year, we've had some big movies, so perhaps I need to have that a little higher. Maybe reverse that. Maybe Q3 last year was higher because we had some big movies. But anyway, I just decided to take the blended average of those. So I've got to be somewhere close. It's a little over 50%. In other words, you pay back a little over 50% of your ticket sales back to the studios. On our operating expenses, you can see I'm just giving you the number. I've got $472 million. That would be our highest operating expenses of our entire era that we've been here. That's $18 million over last Q3. And that is just because the more people you have coming in, the more shifts there are for, and the more you leave the lights on and the more toilet flushes there are, so the water bill goes up. There's just a lot of things that go into your operating overhead. And when the box office is bigger, I've got a plan on us having to staff up for that. And then what's more, Adam and team, I think, have grown probably the corporate side to like run the popcorn business and some things like that. So that one's been tricky to dial in from time to time. Q4 I think was a little bit higher than maybe I had expected, but all in all, I was still pretty close on the earnings number there. So we'll have to track that, see where that falls. I just like giving you guys the assumption so you can just decide, whether you want to go up or down from my numbers. That's the only reason I share this. This is, by the way, there's a function I used to also work in called, some people might call it S&OP, that's sales and operations planning. Some people go a little deeper with finance, so you call it IBP, integrated business planning. I have been at very, very executive levels of those functions. And this is how you would sit in a room and talk about it. You just say, all right, here's my numbers. Here's what went into the numbers. Let's argue about them. That's basically what you would do. And I used to do that at the GM of, it was all of Latin America and Asia Pacific for Nike. And I'd sit at his table and we'd talk all this through. So I'm used to sharing it this way. That's why I'm doing that for you guys. And then taxes. So you've got to assume when we're that profitable, we're paying taxes. I've got us at 7 million, and I guess I skipped rent. So I've got us flat on rent to Q4. I did see we added a Chicago property. I don't know when we started, which, by the way, celebrate that. Like AMC just announced recently that we were opening that Chicago property. So that ought to help our attendance numbers and all of these, profit numbers. Of course, it adds to rent and it adds to operating expense. And I don't know when that started showing up in the numbers, so perhaps that could change our rent for Q2. We'll have to watch that. All right. Some other things going on. And I'm going to build, guys. Stick with me because I'm going to build from, let's even just roll back through really quickly. Hang on. Let me just. All right. So just think of our environment, right? We're re-releasing Centers because it was so wildly successful, specifically at that really large format. We doubled last year's April. May is going to continue. Last year, May was only 550 million. We're going to crush that again. So we're going to way, way, way be over last year. We're going to set a record for Memorial Weekend, which think about, that's the beginning of summer, our peak movie season, and we're setting records. We're bringing Dune back out. We're bringing Mad Max back out. I'm telling you that we're going to have very large profits. And you could convince me that I'm way too low on some of these numbers even. Let's wait and find out. On top of all that, AMC, go look at the press releases lately. So AMC unveils its first XL at AMC auditoriums. And so I think there were 2 in Kansas. I don't know if that's in there. Yeah, here we go. AMC Dine-In Studio 28 and AMC Dine-In Prairie Field 17. So stuck close to home. Opened a couple of premium format screens there in Kansas. I'm sure Adam and team are kind of using that as a test market. But great to see that we are adding premium screens. In the meantime, AMC also recently had the announcement that we upgraded the seating at AMC Empire 25 and Lincoln Square 13. A couple of very big, very important properties. So Adam and team leading with some jewel properties, basically. And by the way, I think I had shared with you all, recently, like on the Revenge of the Sith re-release, my daughter and her friends had gone and, she even used her own money and they went and saw that in the 40X seats, or I think sometimes those are called like D-Box or something like that. And those are like the shaky seats with extra, like she said they were heated, and I think they're like vibrating, and maybe they even have extra speakers. I'm not sure. It's very premium. I think she paid $25 to sit in those that night. And so AMC is investing in having premium seating that a lot of people are starting to be willing to pay for. So progress on the Go Plan. And then just think about some other things going on for AMC. We've got popcorn. Adam specifically said in the Q4 earnings call that had shifted to profitability. We are making money. It is, you might call it accretive or additive. It's adding to the bottom line. And he had told us that we had further expansion, after our Q4 numbers. The expansion was, I think, in Q1 where we were getting in more doors. And I'm sure there's opportunity for more expansion. I still don't have the microwave popcorn at my local Walmart. I still haven't had the cinnamon and butter popcorn that some of you are making me very jealous about because it's not in my local stores. And so I haven't had that yet. But continued expansion on a profitable business, that's fantastic to see. And of course, I haven't even mentioned the candy. I told you about the merch increasing breadth and depth, so we're making more money on merch. Don't sleep on we've got that insurance settlement. Unless I'm wrong, I have not seen an update on that. That is over $90 million, if my memory serves, that we could just suddenly see an infusion of cash. I told you about the Go Plan, but we're going to continue to see further enhancements, putting in the laser projections, putting in nicer seats, putting in premium screens, a lot going on. Now, would you think about in all of those sort of times twos I've shown you, all of the great results, all of the great news, if you were a short, would you be adding to your short position? Of course not, it doesn't make sense. And yet, let's talk about this. I saw recently from Ortex short interest over 60 million. I think it might have even been 62. Fentel has like 58, but Ortex tends to be a little closer to real time than Fentel. I'm sure the next update we get, we're going to find out that that has grown. Days to cover over 10, that's an insane number. That's a crazy number. If you just look at our history over time and look at just kind of study sort of squeeze metrics, days to cover over 10 it is just, to me, that's a pretty squeezy number. So over 60 million shares are short, over 10 days to cover. Price is near all-time low. So, if you think about if you're long, you hear the saying buy low, sell high, right? So you have to flip that in reverse for shorts. They ought to be shorting high and covering low, but they're shorting near all-time lows at a time when I just showed you everything about our business is mega bullish. Mega bullish. And I haven't even really talked in this video about how, I've shown you in the past how this 9 months we're in, Q2, Q3, Q4 of 25, is going to by far be the best 9 months we've ever seen in the ape or retail era. Then the industry itself, not me, not just some AMC ape, the industry has been sort of talking about, could 2026 be the biggest box office in history? And then 2027 looks even bigger to me because we start getting firing on all cylinders more with more Star Wars and Marvel and DC type of content and some really big stuff. So this industry, I've told you the turnaround came in April. We are here. We are at the turnaround and we go up from here, in my opinion. I'm not saying that literally every quarter is bigger. I actually think Q2 is bigger than Q3. But we will see, because some of those summer movies like Fantastic Four and Superman, and gosh, I'm leaving out one of the biggest ones right now. Shoot, this is my old man been traveling for business brain this week. Hopefully it'll come back to me before we're done. But anyway, there are some, Jurassic World. There are some mega movies this summer, and I'm even saying maybe Q3 is still less than Q2. That's how great Q2 is going. And then Q4 is looking awesome. And like I said, 2026 getting even bigger. So here these guys have been piling on shorts near all-time lows. I'm sure, go back to my Q1 preview. It's just a video or two ago where I warned you guys that, hey, Q1 was a rough box office. We will absolutely have cash burn. It's not going to be super pretty. And I have known Adam and team to be pretty mature in they, whatever the results are, they bring them to us and they talk it through. But so I am sure that the shill narrative will be focusing on that. But what I've prepared my followers for is remember that cash flows are real time. Q1 results include cash flows from January, February, and March. Well, January is 4 months ago. So we're talking about a picture from 4 months ago when here we are, we just doubled last April. And we're firing on all cylinders everywhere. So, if you're my followers and if you believe in my credibility, then when the shorts come out and try to focus you on cash burn from Q1, that's like, man, that's just like another world, another timeline that we're not even on anymore. I'm sitting here talking about Thunderbolts and Lilo and Stitch and all-time records from Memorial Weekend and that kind of stuff. So these guys are hosed, in my opinion. I cannot believe how stupid they are to be shorting right now. They think that they're in charge. They think that darkness is going to win. And yes, that sounds a little, perhaps mystical or spiritual, depending on your beliefs. But I do believe this is a battle of good versus evil. I always have. It's why I've stayed here and stayed so stubborn. And I believe that, the truth speakers are going to win, and AMC is going to win, and GameStop and Bitcoin are going to win. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm fighting so hard. Our price to sales is at 0.23. That's 1/5 of Cinemark. AMC's price would have to go 5x to be at the same price to sales in Cinemark. And I want to remind you, price to sales is a trailing metric. So remember back to that forecast slide I'm giving you, and you think about these attendance numbers, and you think about that box office and AMC's market share of that, and you think about the merch sales and the popcorn sales and the candy sales and the food and beverage sales. So if price to sales is looking backwards 12 months and we are in a new reality, it will not start to show up. In this new reality will not start to impact our numbers until we report in August our Q2 results. And then think forward. Wall Street, people like to say that Wall Street is a forward-looking, I don't know, I'll call it an industry. And what I'm just telling you is it is painfully obvious, and you guys know this, AMC is not priced with any kind of forward view. You cannot convince me otherwise. That is not conspiracy theory. That's just obvious. I'm a guy with 2 master's degrees in business. I worked 21 years at Nike. I sat at significant GM, and senior VP tables having conversations on business. I think I've even told you guys I helped rewire the financial backbone of the entire supply chain at Nike for tax and foreign exchange optimization. I know what I'm talking about when I talk numbers. Doesn't have to mean I'm right, but it definitely means I'm not stupid. And I am telling you, AMC's stock is reflecting the shorts narrative about a company that was going under, and we did not go under. That's why I keep saying cash flows are real time. I would bet a lot of money that April cash flows were significantly positive for AMC, and we got a lot more coming. This stock is not reflecting a forward view. Now, we could get really angry about that. We could get really frustrated about that. But what I want you to think about is there's this idea of alpha, right? And I've talked to you guys about seeking alpha as like a FUD website, in my opinion. Very negative, very shilly. In fact, sometimes I've caught them basically spreading what I would allege, I'll use that word allege, are lies, or at the very least distortions. And so I do not like them. But the idea of alpha is, can I find an investment that the overall broader market hasn't caught on to yet? And can I get in before it significantly appreciates in value? That's DFV, right? That's literally what DFV is. I'm not talking about DFV the person, but I'm talking about DFV the concept. And so if you believe like I do that this industry is in a radical turnaround that is only beginning, because 26 gets bigger and 27 gets bigger still, and if you believe that AMC has the business model to profit off of that industry turnaround, then you can get really angry. And frankly, on some level, we should, because there is corruption, I believe. But you can also say, opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. I get to get in, or if I've hodled, some of us, I'll put myself included, have been tight on finances. It's not like I've had a lot of buying opportunity myself. And some of you are there, and I don't want you to feel bad about that. But if I had buying power, you better believe I'd be sitting here going, I absolutely know, based on every just straight up business person's metric, this is an undervalued stock by any metric I look at. I'm in. So yeah, we will win. So let's go.